Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another week of More Than a Statistic. I'm thankful that you joined us back again. My name is Justin Griffin. I have 11 years clean, and August will be 12th. And I'm thankful to be here. I'm thankful to be able to do this, and I'm thankful to have a little something to share today. I guess I should start off by saying be careful who you pray for, because this whole week, Satan's been coming hard at me, really, really hard at me. And it all started out, and I made a joke to him after it started. I said, man, I said, ever since I started praying for you, I said, Satan's been attacking me. And there was a couple of aspects. There was a little attack at work, and it didn't prevail. But I was having a conversation the other day, and it started out as a good conversation. Never had problems. And we were talking about addiction, and there was a statement, just a sentence and this is why I hate text, is because I read it, but there was a sentence that was written out, and I just kind of felt like it was a little bit insensitive to somebody who's either lost someone to this, or that somebody that because of this thing, they have their kid here still with them, or they still have their husband, or they still have their wife, because this thing saved them. And I tried to approach this very cautiously, because this is an unpopular opinion, but it was an older gentleman, and sometimes older gentlemen won't change their viewpoints, and they kind of get mad if you don't conform to them. And it was kind of a situation that happened. But some unsensitive thing, or some sensitive things, I'd have to say some sensitive things were said in a word, and I just tried to use a teachable moment. I told him, I said, this word here, we probably shouldn't use that, and if I understand that you've not been greatly affected by addiction, but I said, to some of these people, that statement come off really hard, and that could do a lot of harm. And then they just kind of doubled down on me, and I found myself in a rapid fire situation. And if you know me, I try to avoid those, because I've really been working on myself and how I react to situations like this, because, I didn't used to do too good a job at it. I used to really fly off at the mouth. I would say a lot of things, and, if they tried attacking me, I wasn't above attacking back. But here I was in this situation, and I said some sensitivity training could be used. And then he kind of unraveled on me, and I was unbothered by it until the part about the podcast was said. I never wanted to do this, just so y'all know, but I'm following my heart. I'm following what I was called to do. This is not my idea. This is not my show. I'm just a vessel here, trying to facilitate stories of hope to y'all. I didn't create these stories of hope. I'm just trying to get them to where you can hear them. That's all I'm doing, and I'm trying to do that by following what God wanted me to do. That's the bottom story here. But I seen that, and it basically read that I hid behind a screen, and that this basically has no value because I'm not out there doing it face to face. And man, when I was at work when this was going on, and that was the one that really fired me up, was in that moment I almost let the flesh win. But I stopped for a second, and I thought, before I react, before my mouth opens, what am I going to do? What am I going to say? And I responded back, and I'm just being transparent with y'all because I've struggled with this week. I've really been on the topic of this in my head all week long, and trying to learn from this situation, because this is the stigma that we're up against. Sometimes people just don't understand, but they think they have the answers, and they won't listen to you. But I know the God that I serve, the way that the healing comes hardly ever looks like any way that anybody ever dreamed it up. And I want that to be a teachable lesson to both sides. I don't know everything, and it's okay to not pretend like you do. You know, it's okay to say, I don't know. I have to do that a lot. I don't know, but I can find somebody that does. And that's a powerful thing. And that was kind of what I was wanting to come out of this conversation was, you know, we don't have to see eye to eye. But we got to be careful about our point of view, you know, because it's easy for us to think that we got the answers, and it's easy for us to think that, you know, if they just do this, then this problem would be solved. In my own walk, I'm learning, you know, if walking with Jesus was easy, everybody would be doing it, and I wouldn't have to be sitting here talking to y'all. This is one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life. When we're dealing with my ministry of these recovering addicts, man, they're broken. They're at the worst parts of their lives, mentally, spiritually dead. They're bound inside. They can't. And I'm sorry that I had to disagree that we had to develop a relationship first. But I'm not gonna bend on that, because I know that when we're dealing with these people, you know, and they call us in this desperation, or when you're caught in the desperation with them, they need you there. They don't need you to tell them what to do. They just need you to listen to them. They need you to meet them where they're at in that moment. And you don't have to agree with what they're saying, but you can just sit there and you can try your best to understand what's going on in their head. And I'm going to tell you how powerful that is, because I had a situation in which this is exactly what transpired. You know, but that's another attack that I can't say Satan won. I've been attacked all week. All week long he's tried coming through various different angles at me, but none of them have stuck. And I've been wondering, you know, like, what am I doing different that it's not setting me back right now? And I'm walking the line. I understand my relationship and where I'm at with Jesus right now. Other people can't tell me anymore. You know, I walk with him all the time. If you seen me driving down the road, you'd probably think I was crazy, because I'd be in there singing sometimes. But, you know, the greatest thing God has done in my life is I don't have to defend me anymore. I'll let you think what you want. I don't care. But when it comes to my ministry of these broken people, I do care. And if you're wrong about something, and I feel like that could bring danger to somebody when you're trying to minister, I'm going to let you know that might hurt them. And I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings. But, you know, that conversation ended. I caught it. We were in a tennis match. And I had that feeling in me, you know, that feeling I didn't used to get. It said, you know what, let's be done with it. You ain't got to go back and forth. You don't have to defend. And that's what I did. I discussed that, you know, I bring no fruit into your life really, and you bring none into mine. So let's not even pretend beyond this. Like, obviously we see a little bit different after this conversation, and that's how it was ended. But, you know, I struggled with it a lot. Of all the things I could have said, you know, I could have attacked, but that ain't who I am anymore. Like, I just, honestly, while it was all going on, I was like, how can I get myself out of this situation that I found myself in? You know, I didn't want to argue. But like I said, my ministry is important, and, you know, if you push some of these people away and they build that wall, you're never going to get back through that wall. And that was the message I was trying to convey, is you got to have a breakthrough with the person first. The person has to trust you before they'll listen to you. And you can't do that just going in there barking off like you got the answers. That can push somebody in our situation to go out and use. And the drugs today, you can literally go out and use one time and die. So I do have a problem with misinformation. I also, you know, this ministry is a hard ministry, because if you've never been greatly affected by it, you will not fully understand it. You know, if your kids hadn't been caught up in it, or if your husband or your wife hadn't been caught up in it, or if you hadn't lived through it yourself, you don't understand. And it's okay to pretend, you know, like you know, It's okay to act like you do. That's fine if you know a little bit of something. But you can't go in telling people that lived it how to do it, because that's another, once again, it's dangerous. This community, they're so fragile, and one little push, we lost our chance, man. And that's why I get so tore up, and I'm sorry that I can't convey. I've had so much time to think about what to say, and my emotions are just so wrapped up, because the last thing I wanted was an argument. The last place I was looking for an attack was from somebody that I knew, and I found myself in all these situations. And through doing this podcast and talking about it with y'all and sharing with y'all, and y'all answering me back and talking to me and us having conversations, it's healing me to where I'm doing things differently now. And I'm just trying to show the proof of that. All I want to do is show that quality of life can improve when you try to improve your quality of life. I am here to bring Jesus to you. I'm not going to lie about that. But I'm not going to beat you to death about it. I won't do that. What I can do is I can show you what He's did in my life. And that's the only reason I believe in Him. It's because He changed who I was. And I'm not a Bible scholar, but I know enough to, he who without sin cast the first stone. I know that we got to be careful when we're attacking things, because sometimes that's God's thing you're attacking. But on that podcast, I went away from that. I want to come back. When my response, I sat there and I was like, God, what am I going to say to this? If you only watched, you would hear me say about how I don't want to do this, and this isn't for me. I'm not here for fame. I'm not here for any kind of clout. I wouldn't be on here crying if I was. But I sat down and I prayed, and I wrote back and I said, because of that podcast, I have a few friends that's going back to church. I said, and just last week I got to sit down and talk about the resurrection. I said, and over 500 people watched that. And I left it at that. I didn't have to explain nothing else. I didn't have to defend it. I just got to show him facts of what it's doing, Just because what you believe so strong, it doesn't mean that you're always right. But it also doesn't mean that you're wrong, We can get to a lot of the same conclusions, but there's so many different paths. And for the ones that don't understand, that if you're watching this, just walk easy with them, understand them, be there for them, especially when they're in their super vulnerable place. Put yourself aside for a minute. I don't care if they say something that hurts your feelings. Sit there and just tell them that you want to be there with them while they're in this place. That's the difference maker. That's how we're going to save them. You got to show them love. I'm going to take love over religion every time. I'm going to take relationship with my Savior over religion every time. I'm not broken, that the same guy used to treat me like I'm broken. I'm not broken. My story is a lot like Saul's story. Is he really let me go through it, but he said, you can't go past this line with this one because he's mine. I've lost too many friends to this stuff, man. I've read into so many statistics of what I shouldn't have beat. One of the highest statistics I've ever seen was 23%. I'm in one class that's less than 1% because I recovered and I'm not dead. I'm just asking y'all to be easy with them and try to understand them. Be a human first, They need a savior, but be a friend. A lot of people's not scared of the truth. They're scared of the view of the truth. Because it kind of makes them look at them. And And we don't like that, you know? Myself included, we don't like that. I got told that sometimes my presence holds mirrors up to people, and that's why they avoid. And I'm not going to apologize about that. I won't apologize. I'm going to be the friend. I'm going to be the friend. Um, that's about all I got. I know it was a lot of rambling, but I love you guys, and I'm here to save lives. That's all I'm after. I'm here to save lives, and I'd love to point them to Jesus. And I'm thankful for a God that protected me all week long. He let me sit and watch. And I was on his right hand, so he didn't let nothing touch me. Man, nothing touched me. But it tried, you know, so we're going to keep on going because we know that when this starts happening, we're about to be on a breakthrough, and we're not quitting. You know, we're here. If you need me, you can get in contact with me several ways. Y'all can figure that out. But I love you guys, and thank you for coming and being here with me. And let's try to educate people, but let's be careful about how we do it. I love you guys.